All right, so I hit unmute today, but I did not share today, Ryan. I was too busy deleting. I don't know if you saw yesterday's data day, but holy good Lord, my man Jim Blaze sent me about 4,000 slides. I have to delete
Oh,
out
really?
the
Oh,
overlays.
I didn't watch it yesterday, but oh my God. Like,
It was one of the most interesting data days ever.
nice.
So, right, like there's as a, obviously in logistics, we get into it decades after it was, eons, centuries after logistics was created.
Yeah.
And I always thought Chicago was that big hub. Like a lot of 4PLs have huge hubs in Chicago. All the rail lines come into Chicago. And I always thought it was kind of like that centralized point for distribution.
Mhm.
Because when you think about it, east this way or east this way, west this way, depending on which mirror you're looking at in the thing. But either way, it's kind of that location. And it actually turned out to be nothing of the above. And the way Jim was going into the history of rail and kind of rail began to really be utilized in logistics to move things back and forth. The history of it was absolutely incredible, brother. Like it was gave me another level again in this world of logistics, how things were created so long ago that we kind of just dive into and don't ever give any thought as to why. And it was like based on population and based on the ability to get less mountains to go through and lowlands and all. And I mean, I was like, wow. He goes, yeah, like it was easy just to put the rail line down. It was a total mind blow. But man, this guy, I mean, beyond having like one of the best WWE names ever of Jim Blaze, right? You think he should be coming out to a theme song and stuff. I love his name. He was a very smart individual. We're gonna have him on again. Looking
That's
forward to it.
awesome, man. It's awesome.
Yeah.
So who, just for everybody who's watching and educating myself, because I didn't watch yesterday's episode, but Jim Blaze, who is he? Like, what is he?
So
What is the
Jim
company?
Blaze,
Yeah.
um, he's a freight geographist.
Okay. Okay.
And
Is
it's
that a
funny.
thing? Is that a thing? Yeah.
So here's the thing: he makes up words too, Ryan. He's one.
Okay, good. I was gonna be like, what?
Yeah,
What?
yeah. So we had a good time about geographicality and stuff, and he made up a
Yeah.
few, and I was like, dude, that is a good one. But yeah, so he's a rail historian,
Okay.
and a rail like enthusiast for like, everything you need to know about rail. This guy knows, like,
Okay.
and so what he did is he went into like we had slides of showing all the different US rail companies and kind of where they operate.
Mhm.
Like in Canada, because I mean Canada, we have two rail lines, right?
Yeah.
And they use the same tracks.
Yes. Yes,
And
they do. By the
so
way,
it
sorry,
was
sorry to interrupt. Did you see what happened on Tuesday with CN
no,
Rail?
no.
No, VN. So for everyone who's in Toronto, CN Rail, which is like Dan's talking about one of our biggest thing, their system went shut down like during rush hour, like in downtown Toronto at Union Station. Every single train was halted. Like you could not get on the go. You could not get a
You
go.
mean
Like even
via?
Sorry, yes, Via. They
Oh,
completely
okay.
shut down. They completely shut down on Tuesday, and it was crazy to see that. It was honestly like everybody, like they said, brother, we were in the wrong business that day. We should have been driving Uber, with those surge pricing. And they were saying, like, oh my
I
God, like
bet.
it was a down from Via. So sorry to interrupt, but like it's just crazy to think about how much an effect that like we don't pay attention to like the rail itself, right? And not just Via,
Mhm.
right? So you're talking about
Yeah.
CN and then the other guys. So sorry, get back to the
No,
what
no,
you
no, no.
yeah.
You're right along that lines because he was saying the same thing. Like he was saying, you think about it, you have a 500 car train that's
Yeah.
double stacked. That's 1,000 cars at like
Yeah.
55,000 pounds. So you're talking almost 1,700 truckloads. So you
Ooh-wee.
imagine the additional traffic on the road,
Yeah.
right? Like just things like that. And then he talked about flat cars and people loading trailers on and off, and how certain lines are doing it and other ones aren't because it's not a profit center, and what's really the profit center for these. And I mean, it was actually a like if you're ever thinking about rail or you have clients that are doing rail, go back to yesterday's episode and just listen to it because
Mhm.
really gives you some massive insight to understand rail more.
Yeah.
And just not necessarily be an expert in it, because most companies have departments. Like if you have an intermodal department, it's an actual, people that are experts in intermodal don't know OTR, over the road, well, but they're experts in intermodal. But I mean, it was literally a master's class on rail and the history of rail and why companies operate the way they do, and how it's structured. I mean, really cool, really cool. Like I had no idea that CN in Canada actually now with a partnership. Um,
I
oh,
don't have your camera. Yeah, you went all dark there, buddy.
I went all dark there, buddy.
Yeah.
CN with a partnership. Let me see if I can get this back.
Yeah, what's going on?
Uh,
It's like the Oscars, when they play the music.
I
You
I
do
put
your
in a new
acceptance speech.
camera today, and I guess I didn't do it justice here.
Okay, there we go. Well, we can still hear you. So from there, as Dan's kind of fixing it out. So yeah, okay, there we go. He's back.
There we go, buddy. Sorry about that. So, yeah. So, anyways, long story short, I mean, we got a lot to talk about today, and I don't want to hold that up with yesterday's conversation. But really cool for anyone that's watching, listening. Go do that. It's awesome. Today, Ryan. Today's a good convo, man. It's one of these things that we're learning about as we scale Bridger and as we're building Bridger. Um, and I think it's more and more we're looking at this idea of the buyer's thought bubble and like entering the conversation of where the buyer's at. In essence, trying to figure out what the buyer's thinking. Um, so I have a few things that I've written down, kind of 4 things that formulate this buyer's bubble for me, and I'd love your thoughts on them.
Mhm.
So the first one is obviously entering the conversation where the prospect is. Like,
Mhm.
what are the general thought, uh, you know, thought conversations? What's the general thoughts of buyers today? And a lot of people would probably say when you ask that, well, how am I supposed to know that, Dan? Like maybe some are pissed off. And my answer to that is, well, you know what, guys? Why don't we go and ask our customers? Like they're a wealth of foundation. And I don't think we use customers enough. Ask a customer. You get sales calls every day. What are your thoughts when you get a sales call? Like what's going on in your mind when you get sales calls? Because then, in my opinion, we can 8 mile that right away, right? Um, I would also go as far as to say, okay, entering a prospect's thought bubble, entering the mind of a prospect where they are, I
Mhm.
would think that would be, is email better? Is DMs better? Maybe it's a LinkedIn message. Maybe it's a video call. Maybe it's a phone call. And ask your customers as well, like, what would you prefer? What would you be more receptive to? And obviously, not everybody's the same, Ryan, but if you ask 10 customers and 8 of them say I'd prefer an email, it kind of gives you a little bit of insight as to, okay, well, maybe I diversify and I do 70% emails, 30% cold calls, something like that, to kind of try and enter the minds of customers a little more frequently than you are now. Once you get that, I would ask why. And the fourth one for me is formulate your calls, emails, DMs, and videos to match their thinking process. So you enter the conversation where they are at that point. Those are my 4 big takeaways. Is there anything you would add to any of those, delete from any of those, or?
Um. So okay, so a couple of things are mentioned like in the prospecting, in terms of like I think you mentioned like 70% like emails and 30% like phone calls, cold calls, and understand what the customer is. I think my humble opinion on this is that every single customer is completely different.
Yep.
But if you kind of niche down, then you kind of see the same similarities. For me, what has worked for me when I'm going through my buyer's thought bubble is, being that like having that expertise in their business, knowing about their DCs and coming up with the research and things like that, and it just makes the conversation easier. I know a lot of people, when they're making the cold calls or they're doing an email, they're kind of like fishing for a response. Obviously, it's a pattern interrupt, which we've talked about many times here. But when we're talking to these prospects, and even for myself, I'm actively still selling. You're actively still selling, so we're still in the game. But when I'm talking to different people from different personalities, I want to build trust with them, and I think that's the number one thing that I kind of look at. And when we're talking about our amazing topic today, which is our buyer's thought bubble, I think about everything else, when we kind of go to the store or we go, we buy something from somebody. Anytime when we actually get to be the buyer, right? Not the actual seller. What do we want? And we want that trust in terms of, whatever you say you're going to do, you're going to do it. And then entering the conversation, I think that's the bare minimum as well. If we're talking logistics, sales specifically, well, you got to understand that what is your really big main pain point that you have? Like I've talked to a bunch of customers. Customers have said to me that like we've dealt with carriers or brokers that, they say they're 24/7 operation, but I can't get a hold of anybody from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. And that's when most things happen. So I agree with what you're saying right now, because I think you got to enter that. You got to talk like they talk. Sorry, you got to talk like how they talk and like act like you've been there before. It's not a fake it till you make it. There's a big difference there. But what you said about like the prospecting aspect of it, it comes with comfort with whatever you're comfortable with. Whether you prefer making cold calls, or you prefer making emails or DMs, and you mentioned earlier in the conversation that like if customers are pissed off and things like that, you know. These are people at the end of the day, right? So they're going to go through all their emotions. If you're calling them on a Monday at 8 o'clock in the morning, well, like full transparency, like they're going to be busy with other things, right? So they don't have that time for that. But and it's not about finding the right timing, because there's never the right timing for anybody else, but understand that, you're there to help and not really be a nuisance. Like I've seen me personally, when it comes to even like prospecting, when you kind of talk about Dan, like, I wait for like 48 hours, but I've seen like other big carriers where, they'll triple dial a prospect every single day. So just imagine that mindset of a buyer, where, they want to work with you, but they just got triple, quadruple dialed from one company and they're already pissed off about that. So how can I go in there and like ease their expectations from there?
Yeah, and this goes back to number one, entering the conversation where the prospect is, and asking your customers, or even prospects you're in good with, what is it that they don't like, and what are they, what, not necessarily what did they like, but what do they prefer when it comes to people soliciting them.
Hmm.
And what I meant by that 70-30 split was, let's say you're doing 100% cold calls, and you like cold calls, but you have 10 or 15 customers that come back to you and say, I much prefer emails. I think it's a smart thing to test and say say, okay, I'm going to start sending 70% emails, 30% cold calls for the next 30 days,
Hmm.
and do a test, and then figure, okay, how much more reaction or response, sorry, not reaction, do I get from these emails as opposed to the cold calls? And maybe it works, because you're correct. Every customer is going to have a different thought. But there's going to be also, in most industries that you go into, there's a general consensus about the frustration. So, like, for example, if you ask any of your traffic managers, they're probably a little bit more numb to the increased calling than they were at the beginning of COVID,
Yeah.
right? Because everyone at the beginning of COVID went like, I went from 5 calls a day to 25 calls a day. So those become very irritating. Then after 2 years of getting 25 calls a day, it becomes normal,
Hmm.
right? So how is that? How are you going to take that pattern interrupt and use it for your benefit by entering the conversation? And obviously, when it comes to like individual issues and problems, I'm thinking more along the lines of, because obviously you want to be more general to start, and then obviously during a conversation, like we're talking specific cold calling, right? During a conversation, your prospects, if you're listening well enough, will open up to where their mindset is, and not in a general sense like, oh man, like get me a pillow, I got to sit on your couch, we got to talk about this. I mean more of just during through the fluent conversation, you start picking up clues and little like sprinklings of where their mindset is at.
Hmm.
Um, so for me, it would be more of a, entering the conversation where the customer is. How do I figure out how to enter even 40% of the people I connect with, enter the conversation where they're at? And like you and I for Bridger, right? In our team for Bridger, it's how do we enter the conversation where they are with regards to their CRM, right? Are they even looking? Are
Hmm.
they frustrated? If they're frustrated with their present CRM, what are they frustrated about? And I think all of that comes with conversation. And I think a lot of salespeople miss probably the best opportunity with what they have with their present clients. Like if you poll those people, pull the people in the shipping department that maybe tender you the loads. You know,
Mhm.
what is it that frustrates you? What do you enjoy? And then use those also. You know, after speaking with my clients that I service in similar industries to yours, here's some of the problems. Is that kind of what you're facing? I'd love to talk about it. Do you know what I mean? And at least that way you're kind of adding some substance to the initial connection as opposed to a, hey, look and see how you operate.
Yeah, there's a couple ways we can go with that. Because like I feel like this is more like this conversation of what you're kind of basing off with that statement just now is more like really like client retention as well. You know, client retention and kind of getting those referrals and being able to sell to your next customer because you're gonna that's essentially who you want, right?
Well,
I think
no, I mean, it wasn't necessarily client retention because that
well,
would be
you're if
more
you're
of a
asking your
high.
current well, if you're asking your current I feel like we've spoken about this topic quite a bit before, like in terms of asking your current clients, like, what do you like? You know, what do you kind of see in the market? I feel like that's kind of like a given, right? In terms of like building a relationship, right? It's just like
No,
when
no,
you're
no.
getting
This is specific to introduction.
and there we go, man.
This is specific to introductions.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know about this topic, man. I don't see it the way that you're kind of seeing it, but I would love to learn more and have like especially with the audience to have them like talk what's going on? Oh, the thing's gone again. Um, but yeah, you're there still through voice, right?
Yeah, yeah. You still got my voice, but I don't know why. Oh, it's that's why.
I know we got a little technical difficulties because everything's going good. You know, Dan's got a new cool camera. I love the
No, it's an old
footage.
one that I just
Oh, did
decided
oh
to.
man, I laid that up for you. I was
No,
like,
no,
no,
no.
I
It's
got
all
the
good.
brand new 8K, 10K. You know?
It's all good. I don't know why it's not working, but anyways, um, so okay, so I guess I don't know. Maybe you're missing the collective point of the convo,
Mhm,
but so in essence, what it's talking about, Ryan, is not necessarily the, you know, what are we doing right, what are we doing wrong, what can we improve on, all that kind of stuff for client retention. This is entering the conversation where your prospect is, right? So part of it is that hook that we consistently talk about. And
mhm,
when we enter the conversation where the buyer's thought bubble is, you know, we've talked about it before where you fall and split your head open and some guy comes and knocks on the door and he's trying to sell you a plumber, like he's a plumber trying to offer you services. You don't need a plumber, you need a doctor or a nurse, right? Um, so entering that conversation, you know, talking to your customers and saying to asking your customers, what are some of the things that piss you off about cold calls? Do you enjoy would you prefer a cold call or a cold email? This is the point I'm getting to when it comes to, and because once you've already communicated with your prospect or once they're a customer, you understand where their thought process is. Like if you're going to do any kind of, you know, high performance sales, whether it be retention, whatever, it doesn't matter. It's still the same process because you're the one that's already in with your customer. I'm talking about people you don't know,
yeah, but I
people
feel
you've
like
never
just a
spoken with.
rebuttal on that, like I feel like you
Go
don't
for it.
need to use like me personally, my selling. I don't need to if I need to get a new prospect or stuff like that. I focus on the prospect, if that makes sense. I don't really need to ask my current customer what they like. They're all different. Like everyone's different at the end of the day, so it wouldn't change my approach. And I feel like for me, if I was to do this, Dan, um, it would just make me overthink. You know, like I just need to make the action. I just need to, you know, have the conversations with them regardless. I don't need to really say, oh well, and I feel like those conversations are going to happen anyways when you're talking to a new prospect and trying to get into their mindset of their buying. Like right now we're going into RFP season soon, right? So there's going to be customers and prospects out there who are buying, right? So figure out what they buy. But I don't really, unless it's like, hey, I'm working with another customer in your industry, they're going through the same points. Here's A B C D of what they're going through. What are your thoughts? Right? But I feel like we should already kind of be doing that already, in terms of like that. But so I would love to like learn, like you said, let's get into the bridger itself, like people looking for a CRM specifically. What are you kind of hearing from like buyers, like their bubble right now in terms of what they're telling you?
So again, that would, I'm hearing different stuff from owners as I am from salespeople.
Okay.
Um, you know, there's three common things that I find with salespeople. One, they don't use a CRM because they've never used one that's been effective, so they don't like them.
Mhm.
And they say, you know what, they're a waste of time. It's just, you know, I could do it faster on a spreadsheet. It's easier on a spreadsheet. That's one. Two, they use a CRM, but they hate the CRM and they just click the boxes
Okay.
because it doesn't really give them anything. And I was one of those people because I created my man-made CRM in a plastic box as opposed to using a system. The system was just to check the boxes. So my managers were like, oh, Dan's working on the leads.
Mhm.
And then number three, from individuals, it's clunky. It's hard to use. It's hard to learn. So they just tend to take the path of least resistance. Now you flip that to a company, and the company will say, well, how do I get my team to be excited about using it?
Mhm.
How do I see how my team is really performing? Like my CRM that I have now, this is not hypothetically, everyone that I speak to from a corporate, they're like, I have a CRM. I know people have leads, but I have no idea what's happening with them.
Mhm.
Like I'd have to go and get one individually and check notes. So there's different needs. But how did I find that out? I found that out by asking.
Mhm.
And when I'm asking, I'm also saying, okay, would you prefer a person to call you in the middle of the day and offer you a CRM? Would you prefer that you get introduced to the CRM over social? Or would you prefer a DM or email or video message?
Mhm.
And the majority, I'm going to say probably in the low 90s, said I'd want an email
Mhm.
because your phone call is never going to really get me, especially owners. Like I'm trying to build my business. It's a tough go out there in the market right now. So I prefer you to send me an email with the strengths of your system. And if it matches what my issues are, then we've got a conversation because there's some kind of qualification there.
Mhm.
Agents were also saying, and this was more in probably the 70%, 75% range, where they said, 25, 30% said I'd prefer a phone call. And the other one said I'd prefer an email or DM. So for
Mhm.
me, that insight of entering the conversation where they are, I take both pieces of that, what the communication preference that they'd prefer and where they're both at. And I compose my emails accordingly. Now, do I miss 30% that might want a phone call? Sure. But if I can connect with, 40% of the 70 that I email, it's a win-win. And then I continue on that path, but I wouldn't know that path unless I spoke to the people that are actually consuming the product or buying it on the other hand, right?
Yeah. No, some great points. I love that you said that, and it gives a bit of clarity on the conversation as well for me. In terms of that, I've never looked at it that way. I've never
Mhm.
asked them that way because I feel like when I'm able to get somebody on the phone or get somebody by email or something like that, um, I would just assume that's the method that they want to go through, right? So I would never, me personally, I just would never like say, hey, do you prefer like a? And I don't know if that's ever been asked to me, if anybody's been trying to sell to me. But I think these points are great little tips that, like, you could really stand out from the rest of the people who aren't asking those questions like myself, right? So at the end of the day, these are just little tips and tricks that I think is so cool to go from there. And then you get to be more strategic with your prospecting, right? Like you said, Dan,
Exactly.
when you're getting this feedback, you're just asking a survey, right? You're just asking for that feedback. If you were to be like, hey, I just want to get a question and this has nothing to do with your business. So then it's kind of like a low risk or low friction because you're not asking them for business. You're like, hey,
Yeah.
if I was to contact you, which method do you prefer, A, B, C, or D, or E, or
Mhm.
whatever it is?
Well,
So
not
and I,
only let's say that you don't do video messaging, right? Hypothetically, as a sales rep right now, you either don't see the value in it, maybe you've never done it, maybe you don't quite get it, right? And you use a tool like SendSpark, and you start making calls to your present customers and ask them the question, if I was soliciting you today and would you prefer a phone call, a video message? So, it's not a generic sequence like template, email. And maybe they're going to say video message. So say again, you have 10 customers, 20 customers, and 8 or 9 of them, or even 7 of them say video message. Why would you not try and incorporate video messaging into your prospecting process to help you get better results? It
Mhm.
makes sense. Hell, test it, right? And that's where this entering the mind of the prospect conversation comes from today.
Mhm.
And how do you know that? Well, it's not like you're running ads on social. Ads are fairly easy. The digital marketing aspect of sales is fairly easy. You click on the ad, that means you're interested. That means the headline caught you or the image caught you.
Mhm.
In outbound B2B sales, it's a completely different world where we don't necessarily know what's going to catch their attention. But if the majority of your customers say, I would probably respond to this, my suggestion is, if you're trying to visualize what your buyers are thinking, then jump into that aspect of it and eliminate that fear and just do it for even 2 weeks and see a response. And maybe you'll get more traction. And if you do, now you've just found a great way to enter the prospect's mind better than what you were doing before. Right? You're
Okay.
raising that bar in your sales, for lack of a better term.
Okay. Agree with that. That's awesome, man. That's awesome. Any final? Well, so what would be your top three takeaways to give to a rep who's, like you said, they want to do this. They want to get into that bio. Like they want to, from what I'm gathered from what you said, number one, obviously talk to your current customer base, see how they like to be contacted. Would you ever put into like talking to your suppliers as well, like how they would want to be contacted as well, or would you just keep this specifically to customer focused?
That's a great question. I would probably also um, talk to other sales reps.
Hmm.
I would probably do that before suppliers, because it's a totally different world, right? Like if you're talking to your trucking companies and your partners in that sense, it's a total different world than shippers that are managing people not showing up, so trucks aren't getting loaded at the speed, which means detention time and all that kind of stuff. Um, I would start with my customers, and then I'd probably um, ask prospects.
Hmm.
And what I would do is, once I would connect with them, whichever format, I would say, was this method of format good for you? Is, like, I'm trying to learn, I'm trying to get better, and we're talking now. So was it a cool way to get a hold of you? Like the video message, did it get your attention? And if not, is there anything else that you would add to it? And I honestly think bringing your prospects into that part of your world is engaging them at a different level.
Hmm.
Like, it's showing them, in my opinion anyways, it's showing them that you're a continuous education person. And if I was buying from you and you were asking me questions, and again, right, this is all if I were to do this, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, it's the only way we can process the information, because I have no idea what you would think in that situation. Do you know what I mean?
Hmm.
But I would say to myself, if somebody was asking me these questions, I'd say like, wow, you really want to learn, eh? And well, yeah, man, I'm constantly learning. Like, I'm always trying to level up. I would have pretty good faith in you and my business being in your hands, because I'm sitting there thinking, this person's not stagnant. Like, they're trying to level up their business consistently. And that's kind of the people I want to work with. Because you
Okay.
don't, obviously, as a shipper, you don't want to work with people that you're going to surpass and are going to outgrow their ability and capability. And maybe it's not like a conscious thought, maybe it's a subconscious thought, but then in 3 months, they're not able to withstand what you need to happen. Now you're changing suppliers all over again, because it costs money, right?
Yeah.
So, and time to do it. So that would be where I would start. And I would even go to, you know, if you can, or if you have colleagues, hey, would you mind asking your customers this question, and maybe teaming up, like if you're brand new, teaming up with somebody that's got a bunch of customers, and say, hey, is there a way that we can maybe work together to try and see if we can improve our connection rates and our traction rates? I don't have any customers. Would you be able to ask your customers this question and let me know what they say? And then, what we can do is, I'm a creative person, you're a creative person. Why don't we put together like a video pitch together and kind of role play or help each other in video, if video was the means which the customers came out above, right?
Hmm.
So that would be the way I would probably approach it.
All right, that's cool. That's awesome to kind of hear about. I wish I could see your facial expressions and everything like that through video.
Yeah,
This is
I'm
different, man.
sorry, but I'm
This
gonna
is
change
no,
the
no, no. It's all
cameras
no,
for
no.
next
It's all
year.
good, man. It's all good, man. So, with that being said, great topic. I thought it's definitely something that I'm personally learning, and I'll definitely be listening to this again and seeing that if this would make sense for me. And just like with everything else, like we've had such amazing episode yesterday talking about rail and everything like that. Deno, this is such a great topic. What can like the viewers of like Sales Chatter Live look to expect upcoming in the next couple weeks?
So we actually have, gosh, we've got the psychology of selling on Monday. We got building trust on Tuesday. We got the future of sales Wednesday. We got another book club next week. We got the recap coming next week. Tomorrow we got book club chapter 10. We got the role of emotional intelligence in sales. I mean, we've got effective sales presentations, setting and achieving sales goals, because Lord knows we're in the projection time of year this year. The power of testimonials. We've got the role of feedback in sales growth, mentorship roles, handling rejection. We got avoiding sales burnout. All of that is coming in the month of October on Sales Chatter. We have got an action-packed month.
All right, and the only way to find out is to tune in every day at 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time, and we'll hope to see everybody tomorrow for Book Club Fridays. Take care, everybody.